For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Granger, because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Granger.com, or just stop by. Granger, for the ones who get it done.
Sports Card Nation, the hobby is the people. Weekly news and interviews, it's your number one source. Sports Card Nation, the hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 328 of Sports Card Nation. I'm going to keep the intro short and sweet. Great conversation with Cindy Dick from last week continues this week. It's the conclusion. Women's hobby historian, sports historian, just does great work and great advocate and ambassador, as I like to always say, for our great hobby. So that will be part two today, right after I'm done shutting my big yap. But one other house cleaning note: Breaking Cardboard. My new old show was a show I used to do. I'm bringing it back every other Friday, starting with tonight, the 21st. A guest every Breaking Cardboard. We'll open some wax. We'll talk some hobby. And my first guest in the reincarnation is Mike Petty. That will be tonight. If you are listening to this on show release date, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, and will come out on audio the following Monday. So if you don't catch it live, you can catch it Monday as well, alternating with Hobby Quick Hits. Okay, quick break, and we'll be back with the conclusion of our conversation with Cindy Dick.
Hi, I'm Isaac Albert, a longtime card collector and the co-founder of the Penny Sleever. My wife and I started the Penny Sleever with a simple premise in mind: to offer collectors top quality supplies at fair prices. We offer a full range of hobby supplies and we'll get them to you fast. Whether you're looking for a 260-point magnetic for that oversized patch card, or a slew of semi-rigids for your next PSA submission, the Penny Sleever has you covered. Shop now at thepennysleever.com and use the promo code SCNation to get 10% off your first order. That's SCNation for 10% off at thepennysleever.com.
For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Granger, because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Granger.com, or just stop by. Granger, for the ones who get it done.
The Penny Sleever. Top quality supplies, fair prices.
All right, now the conclusion of my conversation with Cindy Dick. We're going to start off here with a little Caitlin Clark discussion and some of the stuff she has to deal with. And I make a weird comparison, but see if you agree with me. So here is the conclusion, part two of our conversation with Cindy. Well, you don't necessarily do modern cards. I know I've heard you say from time to time you open some. I know you get to some shows.
Yeah.
You know, I spoke again a little bit before we kind of went live. You know, I can attest to we're seeing more female collectors, which is awesome. I'm seeing a lot more female dealers on that side of the table, where it used to be, you know, just wives of male dealers. Now we're seeing females in their own right being entrepreneurial and setting up at shows. We're seeing females, you know, working in the corporate space on the hobby side. So on all levels, we're seeing more. There's obviously always room for more improvements in those areas. Can you attest to that? Is that something you're noticing? Do we need to still, can it be better, or can some of these companies even do more stuff to keep that trend going at a better trajectory?
I mean, there's always room for improvement. Right
Yeah.
now, they seem to be focusing a lot on the team sports, and there's not a lot on the individual sports as well. It's kind of a loaded question, and I'm not really sure how to answer it, because there's women in the hobby, but they're not necessarily collecting women's sports.
Yeah.
And men collect women's sports, and then there's the collectors that collect for the love of the sport and the love of the card, and then there's some that's purely in it for the money. And so that second group, I don't really connect with, because I've never been in it for the money. It's if anything, it costs me a lot, but I've just never been in it for the money. And so I have a hard time sometimes seeing women's cards commercialized so much, and yet at the same time, that high dollar price, for some reason, that gives it validity. That means it's important. You have the Serena Williams cards and the Mia Hamm card, and that now are in six figures, and it's crazy, but it gives it like a piece of legitimacy that it didn't have before. And it's just because of the dollar signs, and yet it's the same card that some kid picked out of their SI for Kids magazine of Mia Hamm and stuffed it in a shoebox. And it's like, does this make it more important or not? I still go into local stores sometimes. I did a rare thing in that I sent my cards to PSA, but only because they did a local drop off. And so after I met them in the store, I asked the person behind the counter, who was a woman, if they had any women's cards at all. None. None. Which was really surprising, because usually they will have the WNBA cards. Now we have ice hockey and some others, but I was really surprised.
We're getting a female professional baseball league now, and as a baseball guy who coached, in Little League, and then I wound up coaching varsity high school baseball. In Little League, I got to coach some young ladies who were just as good as the boys I had on the team. And then what happens, as you probably well know, is then you have to play. If you're a girl, you have to go and play softball, whether you liked it or not. There wasn't any baseball leagues at a certain. You were aged out, and it became you went over to softball side. And now it's nice to see a professional. It would have been nice sooner, or even not even professional, but regular, just even recreational or high school even baseball teams for a girl that says, hey, I want to just continue playing baseball. I've played since I'm 5 years old, and it's what I know how to do. I don't need a bigger ball. I like the bats I use and all that. But it's nice to see that. I guess better late than never. Would have been nice to see it sooner, but we're seeing strides there. We're seeing strides in and even pay scale, right? A lot of these leagues, I guess we'll use the poster child for with the WNBA. Now the salaries are still, I'm not comparing them to the NBA, but they're closer to that than they were when it first came onto the scene. And we're starting to see more female athletes and endorsements and doing commercials and representing products and brands. And so there's a ways to go, but I think we're seeing some strides. Again, maybe later than it should have happened. But I'd rather happen than not happen. You're kind of, I know I threw a lot at you there, different kind of levels with branding and the athletes themselves and leagues themselves, but kind of your thoughts on where women's sports is in general, even outside the card aspect of it.
Going to your point about baseball, I was never a softball player, but I think I would caution them. It's great. It strides. It's nice. But if they could take any lessons from the Silver Bullets team from the 90s, who they played against men, but they had this great novelty year, and people came out and then they folded shortly after that because they lost the novelty. And in baseball, you don't have a pipeline. Like hockey, ice hockey, which I think is going to be the next big women's sport, they have a pipeline. They have college teams that play. It's in the Olympics. There's interest. People see it. And not that baseball is foreign by any means, but you really don't have a pipeline. And softball and baseball skill level have their own, unique things to them. And so this will be interesting to see how that plays out. It is a competitive market, of course, in sports and TV and getting competitive, getting eyeballs on seat price tickets. And I think that's one of the interesting things with the argument with the WNBA is we want the players to get paid more so they don't have to play overseas and just wear out their bodies faster, but just to get paid more, that's a livable wage. And at the same time, a lot of people don't want to pay higher prices in the tickets. So if you compare a WNBA game ticket to an NBA game ticket, they're vastly different. And I think that in the WNBA, it's taken decades to, in its maturation process of getting more fans because you need to be able to get more people in the seats. So, I would like to see them paid more, but do I want to pay, a $60 to $80 ticket for an upper deck seat? No, probably not. And so it kind of goes both ways. It's like we want to see the development and the improvement, and yet at the same time not always pay more, even though of course there's other streams of revenue. And women's soccer showed that with demanding equal pay to the men's team, and even though they might not get as many people in the stands, but there are other sources of revenue as well.
Yeah, great point. And but it's I'm for fair compensation, so whatever that you make a great point, like where's the tipping point, right? Where if you charge that much, maybe someone's not going to come out, and now you don't sell that thing, and that obviously affects salaries, and so I guess it's we got to look at as an overall, but definitely better than when at certain points they talked about the WNBA kind of folding and going away. So it's survived and it thrives, and now we're I guess we're seeing Caitlin Clark, and she's not the only one, but she's really sort of burst onto the scene after a great college career, and really a very humble and modest athlete. Doesn't just really tries to make it more about the sport she plays than about her. But people love her. Is there's too much, or do you think this is a good thing? I know she's not necessarily looking for the spotlight. It's found her, like it or not. Do you think the attention she's getting is like a double-edged sword where it can be good and bad because maybe it's too much on one person and not just the all the athletes in general, or not necessarily?
I look at it like social media. Like we can absorb 1 or 2 or 3 times of social media, and you get more than that. And there's a lot more out there, and it's like too much. I can't do it. I only like a few things. And with stars, you need a star. Michael Jordan was the star for a long time. Larry Bird was the star. And the spotlight, there was other stars, of course, but sometimes you just need that one person to capture the country's attention or the world's attention. I remember asking my mom recently, she's 82 years old, and I said, Mom, do you know who Caitlin Clark is? And she's like, of course I know who Caitlin Clark is. She's not a sports person, but she has become a household name. And so you get that excitement of this like phenom now in women's basketball, and people will want to come out and see her. And then they get exposed to other people. And then they can start like, oh, I really like this other player. She's fantastic. I relate to her, for whatever reason. And so she's kind of that gateway into exposing more people to a particular sport. So I don't have a problem with it at all, as long as the other equally talented athletes also get some limelight as well.
Yeah, I agree. And one thing I hate to see is too, I think sometimes some of the athletes in the league, in the WNBA, I think and it's not Caitlin's fault. I mean, she's declined. Like she could have entered the 3-point contest, and she declined that invitation, and just wants to work on her game and get ready for the next season. So she's not like the she's not going out and seeking all this stuff. And I think there's certain other players in the WNBA that sort of resent her for the attention she gets, even though she's not acquiring it by her own. By her own accolades as a great basketball player, but not really looking for it. And you see some of these other players, I think, with some of these hard fouls and comments they're making in press conference in the press where they're taking shots at her. That always bothers me because, like, if you know and read between the lines and learn a little bit about her, like this is not her doing is her basketball play and her attention to detail and her working on the game. She's not, she's not necessarily looking for all the limelight. It just comes along with being a great basketball player. And I think some of the stuff she deals with in her own league, if you will, from other, competitors that she faces night in and night out, and not just on the court, but even some of the words, in press conferences and in the media afterwards. I think it's kind of unfair to her, but she takes it in stride. She kind of turns the other cheek, and I know this is going to sound crazy, but I'm a Brooklyn kid, so Jackie Robinson was my idol growing up. Even though I did, he had died a month before I was born, but I learned a lot about him, what he meant, on and off the baseball field, probably more so off it. And I almost feel like, and again, I got to preface this, I'm not comparing her like verbatim to Jackie Robinson, but she's sort of in a sport not dominated, by her race and becoming a very prevalent player. And I think there's some resentment there a little bit, and not across the board, not going to paint with a broad brush because that's not fair either, but from some of the athletes. And it's a little reminiscent of that, just a little small comparison. And she seems to like Jackie, learning about him, she seems to just kind of take it in stride. She doesn't fire back in the media and just talks about her game and the team and successful and doesn't respond and kind of takes the high road. Do you see any of that, and your kind of thoughts on maybe I'm nuts with that comparison, but your kind of take there?
I mean, I think that there is racial bias in sport. I don't study it. I could not speak eloquently to it, but I've heard about the arguments of she gets more attention than some of the black standout players. And she's also done the one thing that's nobody has done, and that is setting that scoring record over men, over women, over everybody. And that's what, really just turned all of the national cameras onto her. So I don't want to wade into that argument because I don't know that I'm sure people have studied it and would be better equipped to answer it than I do, but I know it's there. There's definitely racial bias in sport. Sport's a microcosm of society.
And again, I want to reiterate, I'm not calling her Jackie Rob. I'm just saying there's some similarities there in their prospective sports that and things they've had to deal with.
I think she has done remarkably well, especially when she was in college, of how she handled herself in press conferences. We have no idea the kind of pressure she was on, and the limelight that all we see is what we see on TV, which is a fraction of her life. And I take my hat off to her of how she handled herself as a college athlete.
Yeah, likewise. And well said there.
Time to hear from one of our great sponsors, but Sports Card Nation will be right back after that.
Iron Sports Cards is your #1 source for all your PSA and other grading submissions. Their elite status improves turnaround times. Heck, they even provide the card savers. Their chat rooms provide updates on all your submissions. They also offer wax options and single cards to cover all the bases. Check them out on Facebook at Iron Sports Cards Group or on the web at ironsportscards.com, or even give them a call at 1-877-IRON-PSA. Rob's got you covered.
For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Granger, because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Granger.com, or just stop by. Granger, for the ones who get it done.
Let's go! You are listening to the Sports Card Nation podcast.
So you're writing this book. Is it? Is this your first foray into writing a book, or no?
It is. I did a master's thesis on it. Was a comparison of women's sports and newspapers, and so that's a little bit different, but had similar, pictorial theme because it was both pictures and also text. And so that's the closest I probably got. I did have one book offer. I turned it down because it had the wrong look and feel and presentation and how they marketed the book. And I have one shot at this, and there's a certain look I do want. And so I'm holding out for that. And it's more, it's a bit more of a coffee table type book. It's not just a picture book. It also has a fair bit of history to give it context. Because like we talked about, it's so easy to look at women's sports from the lens of today than it was back then. It is so vastly different back then. And so just looking at a picture doesn't do it justice. And that's why I feel like it's important to spend a little time to give it a little context around the socioeconomic history. But it does obviously focus heavy on the cards. And so I'm still shopping it around. I'm not, I work on it. I'm still working on it, but I have enough, to do proposals and just, hopefully find the right fit.
It's funny. I've had a lot of authors on the show they've let me either sent me the book to read or a digital copy to read. I will say most of them, if not all of them, have been terrific. And I always ask this question because, I write for Sports Collectors Digest and Sports Illustrated Collect, and those are just short columns. If some, but I've had people tell me with my long history in the hobby, some of the stories I have, like, you ought to write a book, and like, I'm not even going to attempt it because number one, I don't know how interesting I could make it, and I don't know if I'd be good at it. Has the whole process been kind of what you expected, more difficult, or even maybe less difficult than what you imagined, going in?
It's kind of a double-edged sword because I read to stay informed, but reading as an activity is not something that I would gravitate towards as my first pick. And so to read about history, I would like reading about, if I had to read a chronological book about women's sport, like an encyclopedia, I probably would not do it. That's just not something interesting. But what's interesting to me is how each card opens this door to want to learn more. And so then when I start digging into their history, then I'm hooked and then I'm interested in what they went through. And I try to convey that, in a short way, because many of these athletes have many books written about them. And so I'm not trying to rewrite history. It is a long process. If you've ever done research, you know that it's like a lot of reading and reading and reading to get one little tidbit out of it. And so it's that ferreting out of information of what fits and what I think my reader will be interested in. And hopefully it is enough to interest them to want to learn more. And that's the goal. So it's again, I'm not trying to rewrite history, but give them enough to show, like, why was this person important at that time? And why was this card important?
Yeah, it's refreshing to hear you say that. And then also, hey, this is the book I want to do. Like I turned down that sort of offer, went in a different direction than I'm envisioning this. Do you have sort of a timetable when people might be able to read and acquire this book? And,
it all hinges. It all hinges on either getting a publisher or getting a literary agent, and those are the two avenues you have to get first, or one of the two at least. Once somebody picks it up, they like to see it within a year finished, and so that I can do. Once I can have somebody interested in enough. And it's another catch-22 because men understand women's sports cards, the uniqueness of them much better than women do, because women didn't have cards growing up. They didn't get that magic. And again, very general terms here. And so like female feminist sport type publishers, they don't get it as much, or they don't get as excited as men that love sports cards. And so it's like trying to find this, somebody that's interested in it, in women's sports, and also understands how unique, novel, and rare these vintage women's cards are.
Yeah, for sure. I know you said you're working on it. These other things have to obviously fall in place for the book to hit the market. What percentage of the book is finished though, is in terms of, like, in your mind, like writing? Is it 75% or where do you think you're at in that process?
Most of the chapters are pretty much done. I need to go through and fine tune things like just some of the stats around the cards and shoring up the references, because it is a referenced book. So that way, if it does get picked up by an academic publisher, it's legit. And, just, I would say 80 to 90%, done. So, fine touches. The other thing, though, that I just realized, I worked on it for a fair bit today. There's a chapter I'm calling the Olympians. And when I started it, I loaded it with, images of cards. And since I had started it, though, I had purchased quite a few more. And so I started going through my database. I'm like, oh, I want this card. I need this card. I need that card. It's a tedious process to transfer them into the document. And so I need to do that to probably, before I ship it out again, so to speak, or propose it, I need to do that again just to make sure I'm not missing some treasure. And it is a curated book. It's not like this is all my 2,000 cards. I'm not going to do that to the reader. It's overwhelming. I don't need to show every single.
I'm sure that would be interesting. That would be interesting in its own right, too. But, that's the fun part, right? Is like, hey, I can go back and give this the proper respect. This one, that happens to everybody. Like I missed that, or that one slipped through. Doesn't have to get it in here and shine some light on it. And so that's always a fun. It's not a mistake because it isn't published yet, right? So you can make all those fine, adjustments and fine tunings and different things. And so, looking forward to that when it does come out. And I think a lot of people will be as well. I think it's it's part of hobby history. It's not female hobby history. It's part of hobby history.
Mm-hmm.
I think
absolutely.
It's like Jackie Robinson to say, right? I'm not a black baseball player. I'm a baseball player, and these are athletes, and these are their cards. So it's part of hobby history. We don't. To me, we don't separate. I don't anyway. The hobby. The hobby's the hobby, and we have actresses and actors on cards. We have non-sports cards. We have athletes on cards. We've got pseudo celebrities now on cards. We've got tops even with their Allen and Ginter putting regular people that have done interesting things on cards. So it's the hobby, right? Just like the tagline of the show, the hobbies that encompass all of us. So that's how I've always looked at it. But I think your book will go a long way to more people seeing that and seeing that for the way it should be. So Cindy, I appreciate you making some time. I know you're very busy with the process of writing that book, as you say, and doing some final touches and tweaking here and there. Anything you want to share where people can follow you, what's going on, what you're doing, some of the cards you own and are acquiring and that sort of thing. Take your time, give out whatever information you want to share there.
For the cards, I have a page called Giant Legends, and it's short for one of the working titles was Tiny Treasures, Giant Legends, and that's what these are. They're small, but they're treasures, and these are fantastic female athletes. But I call the Instagram page Giant Legends. I post a fraction of what I have because I just don't spend a lot of time on Instagram and posting things, but I appreciate the follows. I love the comments. It shows that people are genuinely interested. I have a side business called On Her Mark. So it's onhermark.com. And some of the items we made pulls from some of the imagery of the older cards. They have to be careful of, trademark violations and licensing. But I started making some things. So I'm also a woodworker, and I started using some memorabilia and items like vintage trophy toppers into.
I've seen some of that, and excellent work, and
thank you.
Just amazing talent. I can barely knock a nail into a board. And so I'm always, when I see people do stuff like that, it's always, to me, even more so than anyone else. But incredible stuff for sure, definitely. And I'll put this stuff too in the episode notes. So
all right,
if you missed it, go to the episode notes and it'll link up there.
Thank you for your time. I really, I've always enjoyed talking about women's sports cards, and especially people that really get it.
Yeah, well, it's important. It's part of the whole hobby history, right? And I don't want to say I'm a, you know, people. I've heard other people call me like a hobby expert. I don't believe I'm an expert because I'm learning stuff every day. But I do appreciate the history of the hobby. You know, read books. It encompasses all of the hobby, right?
Yeah.
We don't take segments and that's the hobby and that's not the hobby. It's all, you know, if Jefferson Burdick cataloged it, you know, everything prior to his passing, and then everything we know after. That's just a hobby. There's no two hobbies. It's, you know, trading card hobby, and that's always been my approach. And you know, so and you know, right here in Syracuse, we have you know, Brianna Stewart could run for mayor, and she'd win. She's
Wow.
a
Popular.
local
Yeah.
legend. Yeah, and CNS High School. So, and
Oh, that's
got
awesome.
to know her a little bit. So she's really a great young lady, and you know, I still call her young lady, even though, you know, she's been playing for a bit. But so there's, again, I'm a one hobby guy, and that's how it'll always be. But to give credit where credit's due too is another thing a peg I hang my hat on. I think your book will go a long way into that, and not just your book, but what the stuff you're doing, even on social media, and just being, you know, a historian in women's sports yourself. I think that goes a long way into education, right? Education
Yeah.
is very important, and that's on both sides, so it doesn't matter. So just
I've learned, yeah. I'm sorry. I've learned so much through this process. I mean, you have been an amazing teacher. These little cards, and just again the gateway of interest that they have opened for me, and so I'm just incredibly grateful for them, because all the things that I spewed out today, most of them I would not have known if it hadn't been for the research.
Yep, and learning it as you like writing the book. I'm sure you learned a few more things along the way, as I do each day. So
Yeah.
I always joke, the minute I stopped learning about something the hobby, I didn't do anything that day, or I just turned my brain off, or one or the other, or both. So you know, but there's always something to take away and learn, and you know, every day, and the hobby changes every day too. So you go.
What I can say too is, I mean, there's such great people in this hobby. I have found people that know what I do, know what I collect, and they've either sent me like a tip to some card that's up for sale somewhere, or they just send it to me. And so even though they are few and far between of people that actually know, sell, appreciate, however you want to put it, about women's cards, the fact that somebody would take the time to do that always touches me.
Yeah, no doubt. It's a great community, and that tend to care for everybody, look out for everybody. We hear some of the horror stories, and it's important to talk about them, and just kind of, you know, let people know that there are pratfalls, that it's not you know, it's not always Pleasantville, but for every bad story, there's 10 good ones. I like.
Oh, at least, so, 100.
It's always nice to talk about those more, or at least 10 times more. Than the bad ones. So, Cindy, thanks. Continued success, and again, looking forward to that book hitting the bookshelves, and people can learn about the great hobby history, just in general. So, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. It was great talking to Cindy. This week was the conclusion. If you happen to miss last week's and you want to go back and catch part one, a great conversation about the hobby, especially on the women's side, that's making moves. You know, whether you like it or not, the women's hobby is making big moves, and I like it, and as it should be. And you know, Cindy is at the top, at the forefront of knowledge on that front, and again, you know, great ambassador and an advocate for all the hobby, not just the women's side. So glad she made some time and came on the show. Hope you felt the same way and enjoyed it as well. We're going to hear from our Hobbies the People announcer of the week, some closing thoughts, and wrap up this week's episode. So one more reminder on programming note: if you're listening to this show on Friday, the release date of the show, tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, the debut of a show we used to do, I'm bringing it back, Breaking Cardboard. We're going to call it episode 1. Myself and Mike Petty will be chopping up some hobby topics. We'll be live with a chat room, and we're going to open a few packs along the way as well. So going to be just kind of a laid-back, fun conversation, a little different than Sports Card Nation, a little less structured, if you will, but live, and there's no take twos. So hopefully you check us out. That'll be every other week. So 2 weeks after tonight, we'll do it again with another guest, and 2 weeks after that, and so on and so on. So hope to see you in our interactive chat room.
Time for our Hobby is the People Announcer of the Week.
This is King NASCAR from the NASCAR Radio Podcast. And remember, the hobby is the people.
If you'd like to be the Hobby is the People Announcer of the Week, do a WAV or MP3 file and send it to sportscardnationpc@gmail.com.
For nearly 50 years, Sports Collectors Digest has been the voice of the hobby, bringing you comprehensive coverage of the sports collectible industry. From industry news, auction results, market analysis, and in-depth stories about collectors and their collections, Sports Collectors Digest has everything you need to know about the hobby. SCD is also your leading source for listings of sports collectible dealers, card shops, card shows, and the latest from the industry's top companies. To check out all the latest news or to subscribe to the hobby's oldest magazine, visit sportscollectorsdigest.com or call 1-800-829-5561.
Hobby Hotline is the hobby's only live interactive call-in show. Join some of your favorite hobby personalities every Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, to discuss the hottest hobby topics. If you miss us live, catch us after the fact on all major podcast platforms. Follow us on socials at Hobby Hotline.